Welcome in, folks, to the latest edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. We have 3 games to go for the Carolina Panthers, and we're just ready for the season to be over, if we're being honest. However, I'm excited to see Bryce Young, see what he looks like this week. Can he rebound from the performance that he had? Now, positive news, there's only 3 games to go. Dave Canales officially named Bryce Young the starter for the remainder of the season. So for Panthers fans, we at least get 3 more games of Bryce Young. There are now reports coming out of the camp that Panthers are going to be looking for an edge rusher. So no thoughts about drafting a quarterback. Panthers are trending towards a top 5 pick, possibly top 10. Seems pretty safe right now. I guess I should flip that and say top 10 pick, possibly top 5 if I can get that correctly. But things are sitting nicely. Of course, you would have loved to see some wins down the stretch. Panthers are officially eliminated from the playoffs. And we have to talk about the game this week against the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals are sitting in 10th overall within the NFC, trying to get into the playoffs with a win. They have a 15% chance to make it. They're currently 7-7, third in the NFC West. You have an 11% chance as they sit today. If they lose against the Panthers, it drops down to 3%. I think Carolina fans of old remember some dominant years against the Cardinals, although I think Kyler Murray is playing much better this year, and their overall rushing attack is something that's going to cause a lot of problems for the Carolina Panthers. But here we go, last home game of the season. And I would recommend, if you are in the Raleigh market, the Wilmington market, I think even some parts of the state in the Greensboro area, you may want to go to the game, because I don't know if folks have heard the news, if you've seen the post. I posted it on my account. The Panthers game is not going to be on TV for some folks in the state of North Carolina. That's right. This is unheard of, at least from my stance. I remember growing up, the Panthers always on local TV. I don't remember the last time they've not been on when the Panthers have had a game. They are showing the Commanders and the Eagles over the Panthers. Now, I'm not here to argue that that is a much better game for general fans, and maybe that's where this is going. A lot of the talk around this is really the networks, and not so much the NFL, not so much the Panthers, but the networks that control the rights to like what games they're going to broadcast, where they're going to broadcast it locally. A decision was made, and sure enough, I went online, I looked up the TV guide for Sunday. Carolina Panthers are not in the market. Now, one thing I will say, it's reported that they're not in the market for the Greensboro area, but Fox 8, I grew up in the Greensboro market, Fox 8 is reporting that they're going to show the game. So I'm honestly curious to see how this pans out on Sunday. But from what it looks like now on the map that shows for the national media and where things are going to be broadcast, Panthers might not be on TV. So you may want to head up there. So big game for the Cardinals. Panthers don't really have anything to play for. We can talk about pride. We can talk about finishing, playing for their jobs. Like, all those things are important. I don't think the Panthers are going to roll over. However, coming into this, we know Panthers are dealing with a lot of injuries at the linebacker position. They are very, very thin right now, with a few guys getting placed on IR. We'll talk about some season-ending injuries for folks, and then just the overall depth. And then Panthers in general have done a terrible job stopping the run, giving up 173 yards per game. If that holds true, the final 3 games, we're talking about a top 10 worst rushing defense in NFL history. That is how bad it is. That's why I'm just ready to get to the finish line. They're going to need to draft a lot of defensive players next year, bring in some free agents, do the same things that we did on the offensive side of the ball to get us prepared for next year. But to really get us prepared, let's dive into the numbers. And for folks that are accustomed to me putting together the PowerPoint, going through all the stats, we're going to do it a little bit differently this week, only because I have not had time. But we're going to use the same sources. We'll go through the same information. But let's jump right into this. We'll start with the Arizona offense against the Carolina Panthers defense. If you're a Carolina Panthers fan, this is familiar territory for you. Panthers have been sitting near the bottom of most categories this entire season. So I don't think that's anything new for us as a fan of the Carolina Panthers for you to sit there and say, okay, we know what we are, we know who we've been. But if you're a Cardinals fan, let's take a look. Cardinals coming in on offense, 15th in the NFL, right in the middle at 22 points per game. Panthers are dead last, almost giving up 30 yards per game, 351 for the offense. Arizona's ranks 11th, and the Carolina Panthers are 5.9 yards per play, number 7 in the NFL for the Cardinals, while the Panthers give up 5.8. Third down conversions, they are 9th in the NFL, 42 conversions. Panthers are dead last on defense, 47%. We've talked a lot about the third down efficiency. Red zone scoring, percentage of touchdowns once you get into the red zone, 53%, which is 21st for Arizona. Our defense ranks 26th. The Panthers offense, again, much better than last year. Last week, we saw a lot of mistakes from Bryce Young, 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions. That was the story of the game. If you go back and look, if that first drive, when the Panthers were really moving the ball and close to scoring, they don't have that fumble. Totally different game, in my opinion, but things just continued to compile, and the Panthers imploded. Although Bryce Young he stayed in there, but he's got a chance now this week to show us that, hey, that was a fluke. This new version of Bryce is not what we saw last week. Points per game, though, 17.6, which is 28th. Good defense for the Cardinals, ranking 10th in the NFL, giving up 21, almost 22 points. Yards per game were 31st, 288. They are 16th in the NFL, 338 yards. Yards per play for the offense, 5, compared to the Cardinals, 5.6 on defense, which is 22nd. Third down conversion rate, not good. It was terrible last week, but we're 34%, 28th in the NFL, and they are 44% on defense. So there's a chance. You kind of look at the matchups. Can we stay on the field a little bit longer and maintain time of possession? Red zone scoring, Panthers rank 16th. Again, at one point earlier in the year, they were up there at like 6th or 7th, but about 56% of their scores. I mean, you go back and look at the turnovers, it all makes sense. They have the number 5 scoring defense, though. The Arizona Cardinals do in the red zone, ranking 5th in the NFL. The rushing attack, that is the storyline for every team that faces the Carolina Panthers. The Cardinals rush the ball 46% of the time, pass about 54. Yards per rush, 5.1, ranks 3rd in the NFL. We know the Panthers are dead last, giving up 5 yards per carry. Yards per game, 141 yards on the ground, which is 7th in the NFL. And I've already talked about the Panthers giving up 173. To the flip side, there was tons of conversations in the offseason about the Panthers rushing attack and how good it was going to be. They're 24th in the NFL with 40%, about 40.5% rush attempts compared to 60% or 60.5% passing plays. So not the rushing attack we had hoped for. 4.4 yards per carry, 16th in the NFL. We seem to abandon the run early in a lot of instances. 102 yards rushing per game, which ranks 24th. The Cardinals defense is 18th, giving up 121. And we'll look at the passing attack. Completion percentage for the Cardinals, very high and efficient. Number 5 in the NFL at 69%. 7.2 yards per pass, which is 16th in the NFL. Panthers giving up 7.4. 209 passing yards per game. Again, when you have a good rushing attack and you have Kyler Murray who can move around, don't have to pass the ball as much. But 209, which is 21st, and the Panthers are 11th, giving up 213, but that's because teams run the ball. The passing attack for the Panthers, now led by Bryce Young, 61.79% completion percentage. That is the average between Andy Dalton and Bryce Young. Passing defense for the Cardinals is bad. They are 31st in the NFL with about a 70% completion percentage against them. So there's an opportunity for Bryce Young on Sunday. 6.1 yards per pass, much better than last year, slowly trending, especially over the last 5 or 6 games for Young. They give up 7.4. Worse than we are. Well, I guess we're technically tied. Passing yards per game, 186, ranks 29th. I put together a metric and a stat earlier this week comparing Bryce Young from last year to this year. Much better in a lot of categories, touchdown to interceptions about the same. But really, the span of the last 5 or 6 starts has him looking like a future quarterback for the Panthers. That's your breakdown on the statistical side. We will now move over, and this is what I get for not having this in a nice presentation. I have to click through stuff. We will now go ahead and take a look at the stats for the Arizona Cardinals, then we'll hop over and look at the Panthers. Typically, we rotate. We'll do Carolina. We'll do the opponent. We're going to look at all the Cardinal stuff since it's on one screen, so I'm not bouncing back and forth between screens. Kyler Murray, like I said, 29 of 426, 69% completion percentage, 3,000 passing yards, 3,086 to be exact, 7.2, 15 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, 220 yards per game, 93.7 rating. He has been sacked 23 times. The rushing attack is led by James Conner, who should easily eclipse 1,000 yards this week on the season. He has 973 yards on the season, about 15 rushes per game, 4.5 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns. Kyler Murray, second leading rusher right behind him. Again, he can move around. I think he's going to give the Panthers a lot of trouble, especially with the depleted linebacking core and potentially non-existent pass rush. He's got 63 carries, 4.5 per attempt, 455 yards on the season, and 4 touchdowns. And their third leading rusher is Trey Benson with 291 yards. The receiving core is led by Trey McBride, he's having a fantastic year. He has 89 receptions, 938 yards, no touchdowns. That's kind of wild to have stats that good, but no. Marvin Harrison Jr., first round selection, projected to be one of the best wide receivers in the class, has 47 receptions. You follow that up with Michael Wilson, 482 yards, 4 touchdowns. Connor, 41 receptions, 361 yards, and a touchdown. And then a slew of other guys, which, again, you can go online and take a look. Defensively, led by Budda Baker, 142 total tackles, 88 of those are solo. He also has 2 sacks, 3 pass deflections, and 9 tackles for loss. Kaiser White, right behind him, 111 total tackles, 6 for loss, 1.5 sacks, 1 interception. And then Jalen Thompson with 72 total tackles, 2 for loss. Let's take a look at the sack leaders. Dante Stills leads the way with 4.5 sacks, followed by Zaven Collins, LJ Collier, Mac Wilson Sr., and Dennis Gardick with 3, and Jesse Lucetta. Quite a few guys getting there. Interceptions, Garrett Wilson with 2, Sean Murphy Bunting with 2, Mac Wilson 1, Dennis Gardick 1, and Kaiser White with 1 as well. We're not going to read through all of the stats and or all the scoring or the returns. Led by kicker Chad Ryland, who's 22 of 26 on the year, 84.6%. His misses have come in the 40 to 49 range. He is perfect on extra points. We'll bounce over now. Take a look at the Carolina Panthers. Again, you should be very familiar with this. Pull this up here. Bryce Young, 177 for 296, 59.8 completion percentage. You love to see a few more completions. We've talked about the drops. 1,700 yards, almost 1,800 yards passing, 6.1 yard average. 8 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, a 73.5 rating, 21 sacks. 6 of those sacks came last week. It was a tough week. Panthers got away from the run. They abandoned it. Michael Parsons talked about it. It was easy to get to Bryce when they knew what was happening. You'd love to see the Panthers be able to stick to the run this week. Chuba Hubbard, 1,000-yard season. Not a lot of production last week, but 225 carries on the year, 1,043 yards, 8 touchdowns. Best year of his career. Miles Sanders technically behind him with 38 attempts, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, and then Bryce Young, 149 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is really the biggest story, the health of Raheem Blackshear, if he's going to be available, and or if we're going to see another week of Mike Boone. Sounds like Xavier Legette, and we'll pull up the injury report as I'm doing this live, but from Dave Canales talking earlier this week is likely going to miss. Xavier Legette will be out. But you have Legette right now with 41 receptions, 439 yards, leads the team in yardage, 4 touchdowns. Adam Thielen, who has played half the amount of time, is second with 418 yards. The veteran continues to deliver. He has 2 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard is actually second in receptions with 39, 158 yards, and then 1 touchdown. And then a bunch of other guys on here. Deontay Johnson, it still shows his stats. What a train wreck that's been with him and Baltimore Ravens. But Jatavian Sanders, we'd love to see more of him. I know he was coming off the injury a few weeks ago, a couple weeks, but now coming in. Let's see if we can get him back involved in the offense. 302 yards. David Moore as well, 286. And then rookie Jalen Coker, who has 373 yards, had over 100 yards last week. A lot of that on the 80-plus yard bomb, busted coverage. Let's continue to see him involved, and he has 2 touchdowns on this season. Defensively led by Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods seems to find the flags, or the flags find him in the NFL. It sucks. Guess you carry a reputation, good or bad, it stays with you. But he has 96 total tackles, leads the team. 3 interceptions, 2 tackles for loss. Josie Jewell, second on that list with 91, 7 tackles for loss, and 1 interception, 3.5 sacks. A'Shawn Robinson has been a force in the middle. 66 tackles. He was at one point leading a lot of the defensive linemen. 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And J.C. Horn has had a really good year. 64 total tackles. You don't want to see your corner making that many tackles, but part of it in 2 sacks, 1 interception. Again, we're not going to read through the whole list. Robinson does lead the way in sacks, followed by Jewell. It's 4.5, 3.5. Clowney with 3.5. DJ Wonham, 3. Then Harris, 3. Horn, 2. PV, 1.5. I mean, at one point, it was once you started leading the team in sacks, you were getting cut. That's how this season has gone. Woods, 3 interceptions. Like I said, Jewell, 1. Horn, 1. Mike Jackson and Shaw Smith, 1 apiece. We will take a look at Eddie Piñeiro's stats. He is 20 of 23 on the season, 87%, 23 of 24 on extra points. That's kind of a high-level summary. What we will now refresh it. It's probably not updated just yet as I record this, but again, you can go out and keep up. Jadeveon Clowney battling an illness in his knee. He was limited on Thursday. Sam Franklin, full participant. Xavier Legette, we expect to be out, like I said. Chuba Hubbard had some rest. He was a full participant. Wonham's limited. Jewell, Adam Thielen had rest. Horn is battling the groin, but sounds like he'll play. Same thing with A'Shawn Robinson. Robert Hunt, and that's one that scares me. So I hope that he is able to go. I don't think he was at practice today as I record this and saw some of the notes come through from some of our fantastic reporters, beat writers. And then Taylor Moton with a non-injury rest day. On the Cardinals side, quite a few folks did not participate, and quite a few folks are limited. Trey Benson did not participate. Paris Johnson Jr., Jesse Lukita, Mac Wilson, all did not participate on Thursday, and Elijah Jones as well. And then Kaiser White, he's battling an illness. You get this late in the season, illness, flu, COVID, whatever sickness is going to come up is going to come around. So guys are battling it on top of the injuries that they already have. It's going to be a week, man. Pulling up, and I just closed it out, so you'll have to forgive me here as I try to pull this up. We're going to take a look at the spread for the game, a few other things, and we'll probably close out this episode, man. Not a lot to talk about today. Cardinals are given a 74% chance to win against the Panthers. Panthers were favored for the first time in like 2+ years last week. I warned you going into that game that you should be concerned. I don't think the Panthers like bought into it too much. I think they just beat themselves and then everything else around it happened. They couldn't come back. The Arizona opened as a 4.5-point favorite. They are now a 5-point favorite, and the over-under is 47.5 points. Again, Cardinals 7-7, 2-4 within their division. Panthers are 3-11. Sorry, the Cardinals are 2-4 on the road. I was looking at the wrong thing. Panthers are 3-11, 2-6 at home. Panthers, man, it felt like they're over the last 3 weeks before we had this flop against the Dallas Cowboys that the Panthers found something, that things were coming together. And they were trending in the right direction. It just didn't happen, man. Tough week. For me, I do look at Arizona with the rushing attack, with Kyler Murray, and with us, being down quite a few guys. And I guess that's one thing that I should have talked about earlier. So we can hop over now, and this will kind of feed into our final analysis. Few transactions. So remember, Shaq Thompson, starting linebacker, is out. You're down to Trevin Wallace, or you were, and Claude Cherilus, who are like your second and third string. Both of those guys are now placed on IR. So since then, the Panthers have signed Dan Chisna and Jacoby Wyndham from the practice squad up to the active roster. And then most recently signed Dax Milne, who's been on the practice squad a few times, and Jackson Mitchell as well, undrafted free agent out of UConn. But the Panthers are depleted. And, you look at the roster today, probably talking Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen, and David Moore as your core, paired with Tommy Tremble, Jadavian Sanders. Offensive line, we hope, is intact, that Robert Hunt is able to play. I mean, if not, TBD, possibly Brady Christensen, maybe Chandler Zavala filling in at Hunt's position. I think the Panthers are going to play better than they did last week. It's hard for me to predict a win because we haven't seen them get over the finish line. But I do feel a little bit better this week than I did last week. I feel like Arizona's traveling across country. It's an early kick for them. It's 1 o'clock for us. It's really like an 11 for them, right? 11 in the morning, what they're accustomed to. So maybe that plays a factor, and maybe not as much. But I think really where we're going to potentially run into issues is on the defensive side of the ball. You're really talking John Radigan and Josie Jewell as your linebacking core trying to help stop the run, something that we haven't been able to do. And I think the inexperience is probably going to come out and show itself. So for me, I really want to pick the Panthers winning this game, but just based off of what we've seen, I don't know that I can, and that's unfortunate. I thought the Panthers would get to 5 or 6 wins. They're running out of time. It's still possible, but I don't think they'll cross the bar this week. I think they win at least one more game, get to 4 wins, double from last year. And it may have to come in the last week of the season, TBD. But for me, I do think we'll take the Cardinals this week with a final score of 28-21. As much as I want to pick the Panthers. But anyways, folks, I believe that is going to do it for this week's episode. This is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.